All right, what's up, everyone? I am back, Kevin Allen, aka the Fantasy Football Geek, to look back on Week 5, see what went right, what went wrong, check out the cash lineups, FanDuel and DraftKings, and then we'll follow it up with a little discussion of my big King of the Beach qualifier win, how that lineup came together. And then after that, I will do a new broadcast of a live of a week 6 first look lineup. So I'm going to try to do these first look lineups just to kind of go over my first impressions of a new slate of games. What stands out today, Tuesday, before all of the research comes together. And we'll kind of see how it looks starting out and how it looks at the end. But week 5 was one of our better weeks in DFS Army, I think, all across the board. Anybody who watched the Players Club VIP podcast on Saturday. So I threw together a lineup in there that pretty much scored a 300 on DraftKings as my initial quote-unquote cash lineup. I actually went away from it just in a, and I'll talk about that as I break down my DraftKings lineup and the swap I made and kind of how unfortunate that was and how much better it could have been, especially in the laddered tournaments that I had entered as part of my cash lineup, which I always do. It could have been amazing. But even still, it was an awesome week. We were all over Aaron Jones. We were all over Will Fuller. I mean, Mike Thomas was my only core play at wide receiver of the week. And so, I don't know how to nail it. I mean, I had basically said Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan were like, I only had eyes for them. I had so much of them in my tournament entries. It was unfortunate that it was kind of a weird situation for mass multi-entry where, unfortunately, Matt Ryan and like game stacking Matt Ryan or Deshaun Watson didn't really work because outside of Will Fuller, those quarterbacks did really well, but their pass catchers really didn't. So that was an interesting phenomenon, and that was very unusual. Borderline unheard of. So those of you who are watching, you can throw some questions out. I do believe I can see your comments. So if you throw some questions out during this breakdown, I'll try to get to them. Here, I'll throw one out there right now. Furkan asks if CMC is a core play every week. The answer is yes. Yes. He's always going to be a core play. Yes. Unfortunately, he plays at 9 a.m. this week, so we won't have to sort of make a decision on that. But let's go to the sheet here, and I'm going to pop over. We're going to start with, I guess we'll start with DraftKings this week, take a quick look at my sheet. And, quarterback, I mean, the obvious plays, Winston, Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, we're all over that. I thought all the quarterbacks were pretty good. I think one big difference from me and a lot of the prognosticators out there, I was not as high on Andy Dalton this week. He was way too close in price to Matt Ryan, and that was the issue for me. So I didn't love Andy Dalton and kind of got away from that, even though he had a great rating. I didn't like it that much. So that kind of worked out well for me. I had a little Joe Flacco in here, but the main quarterbacks on my list were Winston, Watson, and Matt Ryan. Dak Prescott a little bit, and Carson Wentz. I didn't play a whole lot of Carson Wentz because I didn't really know how to stack that. I like games where I expect the full game to be competitive, and so I usually stay away from these situations where it's not. Now, one place we should have went if we liked Jameis Winston, could have considered Teddy Bridgewater. I don't know if I did that on DraftKings at all. I didn't play any Teddy Bridgewater, and that was unfortunate because he kind of wound up being in the nuts. But a lot of Teddy Bridgewater lineups might have had Alvin Kamara in them when you really needed. Well, I had Mike Thomas, but you needed Teddy Ginn with him. Apparently, Teddy Ginn did okay. But these were my quarterbacks, and I'll show you my cash lineup on DraftKings. Let's see if I've got it open. Here we go. So this was my cash lineup for Week 5 on DraftKings, And a lot of these names are names you'll recognize. We talked about Matt Ryan being just excellent, not because I liked him so much better than Deshaun Watson, but the salary, 5,900 versus 6,700. I wanted to get that savings in place. At the beginning of the week, I talked about this being a pay up at running back week. And I was always pretty much on Zeke and Christian McCaffrey. I made some changes. I'd have Dalvin Cook or Aaron Jones. That was my mix. It was Zeke, McCaffrey, Jones, and Dalvin Cook, and you'll see that in my notes as well as we pop back over to them. But in the cash lineup, the last minute swap I had made. So when it came out that Kuti was starting and Kenny Stills was out, I really liked the savings on Kuti, so I had a couple of choices to make. I could either replace Auden Tate with Kiki and then continue. I had Will Fuller and Aaron Jones over here, and then I had, I believe, Panthers defense. So I was considering doing that. Then I said, you know what? If I leave Tate in there, I can actually get David Johnson, who I liked a lot as well, and who I felt like was even in a better spot than Aaron Jones overall. So that was a mistake in hindsight because David Johnson hasn't been scoring touchdowns. So, I did like the play. He almost got you to the 100 rushing yards. That would have gotten another 4 fantasy points here, got you 21. So it would have been fine. But obviously moving off of Fuller to Kiki was a 30-point. I mean, those two swaps, and actually those two swaps would have made a pretty big difference. And paying up to Greg Olsen here did not help. Now, I just want to go over why some of these were good cash plays. So I'm just reading some comments trying to see. But why were these guys good cash plays? This is very important. I get these questions all the time. Why did you play the Steelers? Why did you play them? Did you know that they were going to get 5 sacks and 3 interceptions? Hell no. But what did I know? They were the cheapest defense on the board. Let's start there. I like to spend down on defense in cash games if possible. I want a viable defense, but I like to spend down. So I'm not taking Miami or I'm not taking Jets against the Patriots or some horrible defense that's going to give me negative points. We know the Steelers are a good team. Look what they've done defensively every single week. Okay? What have they done? They've put up numbers. Now they're the cheapest defense. Coming in, they had a 19, an 11, and a 7. They had a couple good scores. We also know that Lamar Jackson is turnover prone. He's a young quarterback. He runs around. He can get sacked. He also throws interceptions, which is more what I was counting on than the sacks. But obviously that came to fruition even more than expected. I was just looking for a few points out of these guys. I did not feel great about the Steelers, but I felt great about the fact that 500 spend down got me up, unfortunately, from Tyler Eifert to Greg Olsen, who I thought would be in a better spot. Not so much. Not so much. D.A. Dubs asks, why is CMC continue to do amazing things? CMC is an amazing player. He's the best at his position in the league. If you watch him, there's a lot of talent being displayed, and the team gives him the football every other play. If you give me 35 touches with the most talented running back in the league, he's going to do incredible things. That's just what it is. They're playing him at a usage level that's unprecedented, and instead of worrying about why or trying to outsmart it or try to be cute about it, just know that the next time you see this guy, he's going to be over 10K. You might as well just get in there, bite the bullet. All right, so continuing with this lineup, we went with Kiki Kuti and Auden Tate because they were min salary and they were in line to get a bunch of targets. Kuti as the number 3 wide receiver for a team in a spot that I loved. They wound up scoring 53 points. We knew this was the high-scoring game of the slate. So when you're going to take an ancillary piece, you want him to be connected to the high-scoring game of the slate. That's your best shot because the number of touchdown opportunities will be higher in that game. Auden Tate was going to be starting again for a bunch of injured players, but more importantly, he had 10 and 6 targets in the previous weeks. He got you another 6 this week. So he did what we expected him to do. That's all we wanted. You know, it would have been nice if he, put up some yardage and got you 18 points. But he did what we were expecting. This is a cash lineup. So all I wanted out of these 3K guys was just something. Something so I can afford the studs I wanted to use. Did Zeke Elliott perform the way we wanted him to? No. But did it hurt us? No, because he still put up a decent number. And again, when our super punts did okay, it kind of worked out just fine. It's funny. This lineup, which scored 199, was not like a crush cash lineup. It didn't win all head-to-heads. It was about a 70% win rate. So lots of losses, even at this kind of score. Turned a profit, but had some losses in there. Greg Olson, why you do me like that, man? Got nothing to say about this. He put up a 0. This was basically my get cute spot. I said, you know what? I think a lot of people in cash are going to kind of be similar, and a lot of people talking about Eifert. I didn't like Eifert. I talked about it all week. I didn't love Eifert. I wanted to do anything I could to get off of Eifert. Nothing else looked great at the tight end position this week. You know, it's crazy. I almost put in Jared Cook because he was the same price as Eifert and just said, fuck it. Maybe he can outscore Eifert. Well, you know, he's no worse. He's getting the same number of targets in a good spot, but I ended up paying up a little bit for Olsen because I thought Olsen had a little more upside. He didn't, but it didn't hurt me. And the biggest one I want to talk about is Michael Thomas. Why were we on Michael Thomas? I'll show you why. I'm not even going to tell you. I'm going to show you. 13 targets. 7, 9, 13 this past week. Michael Thomas, look at these results. Why did his salary come down so much? Came down, stayed down. It's just an error in the pricing. And people didn't realize, even the week before at Dallas, 9 for 9 with 95 yards. Like, what? He was one reception away from a 25. Jake Castro asks, which contest do you enter your cash lineup into? I enter my cash lineup. First, I make a bunch of head-to-heads. Wish I could show it to you here. It's difficult to show results the next day on DraftKings, but first thing I do is I enter a bunch of head-to-head. Let's see if it pops up here. I don't know if that's going to work. I really don't know if that's going to work, but I enter a bunch of head-to-heads. I do it today. So like, I would have already entered all of these head-to-head contests probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. Then I scale it up. Here's some head-to-heads, but it doesn't show the lineup. Let's see if I can do this by lineup. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't show it the way that I would like it to. But yeah, here it is. So you'll see, like, then I'll scale it up. So here's another contest where I entered my cash game into. This is a 3-point stance, 5 entry max, a smaller contest, 7,000. That's big. That's probably the largest one, but a little bit higher dollar. I'll also enter this into like $100 spy that might be like 150 entrants. I try to scale it up by the size of the tournament. So after doing all my head-to-heads, all my double-ups, my 50-50s, and I kind of try to get as much action as I need on that, like for that I'm comfortable with, then I'll put it in some smaller tournaments. So like a 50-person, 150, a 500, then even like a 5,000 or a 10,000. But I will I bother scaling it all the way up to the 200,000 entry? Yeah, probably, just because it's $1. But that's not where I'm concentrating my dollar allocation on smaller contests. 200 entrant, and I'll show you in a second here a different example of how that works. But I'm concentrating my dollar allocation. Now, you've seen my cash lineup. Let me jump back over to my note sheet just to show how all of these guys were really pointed out. You got Matt Ryan, all 5-star. I don't know how to tell you to play a guy more than that. Christian McCaffrey, 5-star. Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook, also 5-star plays. Dalvin Cook worked a little bit better than Zeke Elliott for this slate. David Johnson, 3-star. Aaron Jones, all 5-star. Leonard Fournette, all 4-star. When I mark a player all, that's who I'm considering for my cash lineup. So if you just use this sheet right? You would have said, all right, I'm not going to pay up for a 3-star all play at 7,100. So you would have been between Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan, and Matt Ryan being a 5-star for 5,900, you would have went with Matt Ryan. If you're just looking at this, right? Now you're looking at this. Now you're looking at the running back position, right? DFS Army subscriber. You've got the sheet in front of you. You're like, who am I going to play in my cash lineup? Well, 5-star, 5-star, 5-star play, core, 5-star all. Now, in hindsight, this should have been core. I was looking at the salary difference and the slight difference in the matchup. But in the end of the day, Christian McCaffrey is doing such incredible things. You can't even worry about matchup and shit like that. You just have to play him. So you would have been on the same group. McCaffrey, Cook, Zeke, David Johnson, Leonard Fournette, and Aaron Jones. And you know what all of these guys had in common? They all crushed. So, well done. You know who else crushed? Philip Lindsay. He had a pretty good game. Austin Eckler did all right. Fuck Austin Eckler. I told you guys not to play Eckler for a reason. Because why the fuck would I play this guy in his mystery when I could get Fournette or Aaron Jones for cheaper? But he did do okay. Thanks, Scott. I love you. Not just my sheets. Love you guys. All right. Wide receiver position. Wide receiver is always difficult every single week. But if you look at the sheet, you got one core play. One core play. I never give out a core play at wide receiver because it's so fucking volatile. But I want to talk about some of the plays I liked anyway. Now, obviously, everybody was on Hopkins and Jones, and they didn't work. Okay, these are the studs. They didn't work. The games worked. The games worked. But these players didn't work. The games worked. That's why wide receiver is so fucking difficult. Okay, that's why it's difficult. Because Houston scores 50 points. DeAndre Hopkins doesn't do shit. Atlanta scores 38 points. Julio Jones doesn't do a thing. That's the wide receiver position is volatile. So it's very scary to go heavy or all in on anybody, and you never should. The bust rate is massive. Through this season, I just saw a stat that the bust rate at wide receiver is the highest it's ever been, over 70%. So the high-owned wide receivers are busting at a 70+% rate this year. It's actually 80%. It's crazy. Be careful with high-owned wide receivers. Now, here's some interesting ones. Thielen, 4-star play, did really well. Crushed. Michael Thomas, core play, broke the slate open. Tyler Boyd, not a lot of people know, put up 25-ish points. He crushed this week. 4 stars. A lot of people said I was all over Fitzgerald, but, I mean, sure, I like Fitzgerald on FanDuel, but I didn't play him on DraftKings because he was much, much cheaper on FanDuel. Who else did we like? Marquise Brown, another more FanDuel than DraftKings play for me. DraftKings. He is so much cheaper on FanDuel compared to DraftKings that there is merit to just playing him on FanDuel and going full fade on DraftKings as part of an overall portfolio approach to looking at your lineups across multiple sites. If you were on DraftKings, you didn't play him. Or you only played him with Lamar Jackson using the sheet. We loved Cortland Sutton. Also liked Emmanuel Sanders. Only one of them worked. And it wasn't Manny. The slate breaker was Will Fuller. You know, it's interesting. If you look at ownership projection, you want to figure out who the chalk is. Fuller was the chalk. 21% owned. So if you want to get on the chalk in cash, and this should have been marked cash, just seeing the ownership projection and understanding how high owned he was going to be. I did wind up using him in my FanDuel cash, which you'll see in a minute. But I loved Fuller this week, and, you know, that really paid off for those who used him. The final core play was Auden Tate, and this was just purely a salary play. 4 stars, core, all good. Listen, he got you 10 points, did what he had to do. We saw he was going to be high owned. Kiki Kuti, also in here, did the same thing. Cheaper than Auden Tate, put up the same number. Keyshawn Johnson, I'm not even sure what he did. Tight end was very difficult. I don't even want to rehash it. Zach Ertz was the best play of the group. I liked Hooper the most. He's my only all call, and I kind of wish I had played him in my cash lineup as well. I just couldn't get there. I couldn't get to 4,500. So I wasn't able to play him. Defense, Eagles, 5-star all play, 40 points. 5% owned. I hope that some people, you'll see my FanDuel. All right, let's go to FanDuel. I want to show the lineup. Fuck, of course it's not showing. How did that even happen? Where's my head-to-heads here? Is this even pop? Oh, great. Well, now that I'm going to have to look for it, that's going to be fun. On FanDuel, I did play the Eagles defense, and that was the saving grace of the cash lineup. So I'm going to try to find it here. I just had it open a minute ago, and I had prepped it, and, you know, I probably saw a squirrel or something and then got distracted. And shut it down. But my FanDuel lineup had Eagles defense in there. How the hell did I? It was on page 5. You know, this is the difficulty of doing this live, right? I got to now look for it. But I wish I could pause this. Jake, I do think we're going to get another Millie winner this Sunday, yes. I hope so. You only get 14 of them, or you only get 17. I guess there's 17 per site each year for NFL. FanDuel didn't used to do a millionaire maker. They didn't used to have that. They didn't always have that. Now they do. So many pages of lineups, it's difficult to find one here. I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'll try to look again here, but 146. Yeah. But, all right, I'll just jump over to my sheet, and I'll tell you what my lineup was. It was very, very good for FanDuel, even better than DraftKings. So, again, let's look at the FanDuel coach's note sheet. I'm going to try to look for it on the other page here. Simultaneous. See if I can make that work. But coach's notes. Again, this one was interesting on FanDuel because Watson and Matt Ryan were much closer in salary than they were on DraftKings. So the way I played it was I went heavier on Deshaun Watson in FanDuel because he was essentially relatively underpriced, right? So I was like, all right, let me just focus in on him over here. Now, if you look at my notes, kind of talked about that and also about how, you know, this Atlanta defense, and let's keep that in mind for this week. This Atlanta defense is the same defense that made Marcus Mariota look relevant. So we've got another game against Atlanta this week that we'll talk about very soon. So I did end up going with Matt Ryan in my lineup, but if you look at the picks here, again, Cousins, a little bit of Flacco, Dalton, not as excited. Matt Ryan, all play. Deshaun Watson. I pretty much focused on those two guys. Lamar Jackson was relatively cheaper on FanDuel. I definitely played him a little bit, 10% in my GPPs, and you know that was a disaster. He was terrible. So that was unfortunate. Scrolling down, McCaffrey, core play. Zeke Elliott, core play. Aaron Jones, all. David Johnson, all. We nailed the running backs this week. Brad Huffman asks, what's the difference between core and all? For me, when I tell you a player is core, what I'm saying is I'm going to have him personally in core play is the same thing as all in the sense of these players are appropriate for all contest types. The difference for me is when I'm telling you a player's core, that's my personal core. That's a guy who I'm basically, when I start a lineup, I go to my core plays first. I'm like, all right, I'm starting to make a lineup. Who's my core? Zeke, boom. CMC, boom. He's in there. They're like the automatic first clicks that I do in any lineup that I'm creating. So that's more of me sharing which are my favorites of the players who I think I've deemed appropriate for all formats. Like sometimes you might see 5 stars, 2 guys 5 stars or 3. And so if I want to tell you like I really like one more than the other, I'll mark one core and the other one just all, but they'll still have the same rating. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be right. Like I said, if you look at this here, I have Zeke. These are all 3 5-star plays between McCaffrey, Zeke, and Cook. But in this case, Cook did much better than Zeke Elliott in this occasion. So they were both all in great spots. They're all appropriate for cash and tournaments. But again, I'm always struggling every year. It's always a struggle to kind of figure out what the best way is to relay this information so everybody understands it. But I loved Aaron Jones. That really worked out so well. And Sony Michel, obviously, we played the Sony Michel music on the podcast. Furkan, just because it says I made 7K doesn't show how much I put in, but yes, I did make 7K this week. More than that. Where were we? Okay, wide receiver position, again, always difficult. Will Fuller, wish I had marked him all. Now, I had Larry Fitzgerald as an all play. This was price related on FanDuel. He was just so cheap. And he did fine. He just didn't break a slate open. Tyler Boyd was one of the better plays. And he was much relatively cheaper on FanDuel than he was on DraftKings. Anybody who played, Allen Robinson crushed this week. Obviously, Will Fuller was amazing. Cortland Sutton was incredible. John Brown did just fine. Calvin Ridley crushed. I had a lot of him. Everybody was scared to play Calvin Ridley. I was like, when people are scared, I loaded up on Marquise Brown here. He got you a touchdown before he got hurt. He was going to be a very good play. So you'll always notice I have a lot more wide receivers on my sheet than I do running backs. It's not just because the wide receiver position has more players and you need 3 or 4 of them, but it's because wide receiver is so volatile. I want to give a mix, and I hopefully want people to fall on the right guys. So, Godwin, yes. Evans, disaster, bust. Hopkins and Jones, bust. Robinson, incredible. Alshon Jeffrey, I don't even know what the fuck he did. Tyler Boyd, incredible. Will Fuller, slate breaker. Cortland Sutton, slate breaker. You had some of the best plays right here, mixed in with some shitty ones. And that's how it's always going to be. If I could... Yeah. Furkan's asking... To say a free box, there are free squares in cash. But yes, the way I'm looking for players is I'm looking at the matchup, I'm looking at DVP, I'm looking at potential game flow. Then you try to get a little deeper. I want passing offenses against teams that are good against the run, but bad against the pass. That's a team like the Saints. That's a team like the Jets. To make it more exciting, I want players where both sides are teams that are good against the run and bad against the pass. I'm going to show you something very cool that my man, Statsational, puts in his model. Take a look at this. Offensive passing minus defensive passing. What does this mean? I don't know what it means. Let's check it out. This shows the combined passing for offense and defense. Good teams to target in stacks. All right, so what does it actually mean? This is a team that passes well, but can't stop the pass. And we want to find the green. So Kansas City is a team where you want to stack against them every time, or stack any games that they're in. Why? Because they pass really well and they can't stop the pass. Now, for the run, it's the same idea. Where am I? For the run, it's the same idea. I want teams that are pretty good against the pass, but allow you to run, like Carolina. We have these statistics. Again, so that's pretty much it, the breakdown. I want to point out Eagles defense, again, 5% owned. I had them as a 5-star all play. I don't know what to do more. They scored 40 points. Patriots and Bears were both just fine. If you stuck to the outline with the defense, it worked out pretty well. Panthers were great. Cowboys didn't work. I assume the Vikings played well. I don't remember. But that does it for the look back. I want to show one more lineup, guys. This is the King of the Beach qualifier lineup. That's a $10,000 winner. Taco. What's up, Taco? He asks, is there enough 2019 to determine? Yes. Yes. Is it foolproof? No. But if you're looking at the performances from an averaged out perspective, so if we look at them versus an average team, so you can take the statistics and say, all right, this team is very good against the pass because teams that normally throw for 300 yards only throw for 270 against these guys, then yes, there's enough. I mean, NFL is never going to be like another sport that has like basketball where we get 82 games or baseball where there's 160. The stats are never that intense, but I mean, we're at week 6. Yeah, we have a pretty good idea of if these guys are good. I did, Taco. I saw your question, but no, I saw your question after I pulled it up, so I went back to it. But yeah, and these numbers have been incredibly predictive. I mean, you can look at this week, and you're already starting to see, this is what I do. I'm like, all right, this ain't going to be a good game for the Giants, guys. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? Who's going to get passing yards this week? Kansas City. Okay, let's get some. Now, Houston going to run? We'll see. They have a running back? I don't know. But you start to look at the greens. Atlanta passing offense. Okay. How about Dallas passing offense against the Jets? There we go. Jets, you can't trust the numbers because they got a new quarterback coming in. Maybe they'll be a little bit better. So you have to take these stats with a grain of salt in case something new. But check out San Francisco. No matter who they play, expect them to run a lot. But San Francisco loses the big... I'm getting too much into next week. But San Francisco loses the big fullback that really opens up a lot of their running. So will this hold? I don't know. You have to pay attention to injuries. You have to pay attention to changes and things like that. Let me jump through some more questions here. Hunter, free squares, all salary savers. And you're right. It's not a free square when you got to pay $5,500 for a salary. Like, just because we know somebody's in a great spot, who knows? Solomon asked about DJ Shark. DJ Shark was not a good play. It was a terrible situation for him, but good players come through in bad spots. That's the lesson of DJ Shark. Panthers been one of the best pass defenses, but DJ Shark got a couple big plays in. Shit happens. Speaking of the KOTB, yes, this was my first entry, and this is thank you, Hunter. This is my first entry into the King of the Beach. I once tied for a ticket and then lost the tiebreaker to Peter Jennings, CSU Ram. That fucker took my ticket. What are you going to do? A couple years back. But no, I don't normally attack this contest, but I really want to go. So we'll see how that goes. But let me talk about this lineup real quick, and I'll continue to take a few questions if there are any. And then I'm going to start a new stream for a first look lineup because I want to separate the two things. So I'm working the technology, guys. Doing my best. All right. So Millie Maker lineup, and actually there were some changes. All right, Matt Ryan. So this was a qualifier, King of the Beach. Where's my rules? It's a small contest, 67 entrants. I believe the entry fee was $385. And I liked that it paid out the top two because I'm always the bridesmaid and never the bride. You know what I mean? So I'm like, fuck it. If I take the top two get in, maybe the bridesmaid will get lucky. And that's how it worked out. So, small contest, handcrafted lineup. Again, I just went with my core players, guys. Kept it simple. I tried to get off some chalk, and that's where I want to talk about this lineup and how I got to it. I tried to get off some chalk. Matt Ryan was my guy. I just wanted him in my lineups. I just wanted him. I'm trying to read your comments, guys. So I was going to start with him, right? Now I've got to do a stack. So I didn't want to pay up for Julio. And if you'll note, one of the things that I've noticed over the years is that the bigger correlations are actually between QB and WR2. Though that is the strongest correlation. Like if you look at actual correlation data, it's not QB and WR1 because the WR1 always looks kind of good. When the QB is crushing, his WR2 does well. So that's why I use Calvin Ridley. Now I considered, again, Will Fuller because of the game stack potential, and I would have went there with Fuller had I had enough funding left. There's another version of this with Fuller that would have worked really well, obviously, but it didn't matter. So Christian McCaffrey was a lock button. I mean, how do you not play him ever? Aaron Jones, I talked about him on the Players Club podcast quite a bit. Taco, I'm going to get to these in the for look ahead video. I just want to finish this component here. So Matt Ryan to Calvin Ridley. I've got my core running back. I thought Aaron Jones would be lower owned, and I really love that. So I went off of Zeke, Christian McCaffrey, because I just wanted to be a little bit different from the crowd here. I went with Aaron Jones, who I loved. That was just a miss by anybody who wasn't all over Aaron Jones. I mean, I don't care where he is. Anytime Aaron Rodgers gets a single running back for the entire game, you got to be all over that shit because they split touches. It's a disaster. But when he gets just one guy, it's usually really good. So here's the first swap out off of chalk. The chalk build that I had where I started and then pivoted off would have had Tate over here because everybody was on Tate. So I said, fuck Tate. He's too high owned for a contest where only first place is going to win. So I said, fuck that. Let me go to Kiki, who I thought was in just as good, not a better spot, but just as good of a spot for lower ownership. Not a better, but just as good. He also fit with Matt Ryan and the game stack concept that I was trying to put together for this lineup. Because you know, if it's a game stack, I want Ryan and Kuti, not Ryan and some fucking player from the Bengals. Michael Thomas was a lock in every lineup. Like if you're building lineups this week on DraftKings and Michael Thomas wasn't in it, I don't really know what you were thinking. He was in all of my handcrafted lineups. I didn't have a lineup without him. That's why he's marked core. Hoops, again, Matt Ryan wanted to get Austin Hooper in there with him. Little correlation. Very simple. David Johnson, Panthers. I mean, the lineup comes together. This was so easy. This almost could have been a cash lineup as well. This came together. I just slapped it together. It was like, Ryan, all right, let me get two players from his team. Hooper, Ridley. Could have gone with Sanu. I usually go with Ridley. I think he has more upside in the tournament. Then I wanted a comeback with Kuti. I would have done Fuller if I had a little funds left over. Didn't matter in the end, although would have crushed if I did. To do that, I would have had to gone from David Johnson down to Leonard Fournette, who I like just as much. Could have worked out. Fournette scored, I think, a little bit more than David Johnson did. And Panthers defense, who we loved all week. This was a lineup that you look at the score. It wasn't super special for week 5. It was just a fine score. It was good, but it wasn't anything special. And that is the beauty of a 67-person contest, people. That's the beauty of a 67-person contest. When you enter a 60, you don't have to be perfect. This is not a perfect lineup. Like, there's so many fuck-ups in here. I should have went to Fournette. Should have had Will Fuller over there. That's the only fuck-up, really, actually. Not so many, just the one. But nonetheless, just the one fuck-up. But nonetheless, in a 67-person contest, you don't have to have perfection to win the contest. And that's how the big guys do it. That's how the names that you recognize make most of their money. They're not winning. Yes, you'll occasionally win a $100,000 prize on $2,000 in entries in a GPP. But trust me, you enter that $2,000 a lot of times before you win the Hundy. And you lose money in those contests more often than you win. So you got to win one every once in a while to make them pay off. But these type of contests, you have a legit shot of beating out 67 other people. It's not that hard. So that's it for the Week 5 look back. Guys, hang around if you're watching this live. Give me 5 minutes to reset, and we're going to do a first look Week 6 DraftKings lineup. Let's do this. Solomon, just to finish up, yes, my name is The Geek, and I am one of the coaches. I put out a sheet in the DFS Army and multiple podcasts every single week. I do 3 of them. You can see this ugly mug breaking down the slate, talking to smart people about the slate, asking questions of people who are better than me at DFS about the slate, and then breaking it all down for you guys on the Players Club video/pod every Saturday. We make it easy. Thanks, guys. All right, I'll be back with a first look lineup breakdown. Let me figure out some technology of how to do another live stream. I'm going to end this one here. Thanks for being here, and stick around for the next one.